Willkommen, bienvenue, and welcome to Scrap Mechanic with Lyte. So yeah, new game just came out in pre-release. Lots of fun, lots of sandbox, and some nice scenery, as you can see around me. Some nice trees, some nice land. But at the moment, it's just creative mode, and everything is mostly indestructible, which is a shame. But, oh, that was the wrong direction. You can see we're on the top of a nice old tree. Nice old mountain here. Can see all sorts of things in the foggy distance. It's a lovely place. But we probably don't want to be on this mountain anymore. Let's go. So you've got first-person view, you've got third-person view. Yay. Got a big old hammer you can hit things with. And, as you probably could tell from the title of the episode, I built myself a manual transmission car. Now, normally, the first thing you build in this game is just a regular old car. I felt like doing something special, and I made something a little, big. You have to jump to get up onto it, but you can bring 3 of your friends along. Nice, open, canopy sort of vehicle. And, yeah, you can see a couple of buttons up front. Interesting setup. Let's just get moving and I can tell you generally how it works. This is going to be a spotlight, not a tutorial. I'll likely make a tutorial for it later, but for the moment, I'm just going to drive around, tell you what it is, how it works, and how it's different from some of the other cars you might encounter. First off, I've got some jet assistance for staying on the ground, because traction is sometimes a problem. Now, you can see in front of me, let me zoom in a little bit, there are various switches that I can activate with my number keys that activate the various gears of the car. So when I was going backwards, I was in the 5th one, that's the reverse gear. Let's put it in 1st gear and just start moving a little bit. We'll zoom out so you can get a nice view. 1st gear is very slow. It's when you just want to take a nice leisurely view, like stroll through the mountain or the forest or whatever, and you're in no particular hurry to get to wherever you're going. Now, we have no clutch per se, but in general it's better to add the next gear and then remove the previous one, because otherwise you're going to kind of stall out and stop for a second, and it's just kind of annoying. So 2nd gear is not a whole lot faster, but it's a little faster. You can see that you've got some stuff being kicked up in our movement. If we kick it up to 3rd gear, it adds another set of thrusters to help with our traction. But now we're moving along pretty well, but we're still on a mountain, so 3rd gear is probably not our best bet. And unlike, let's go this way. I don't know what's over here. This might actually be heading back up. I don't know. Let's just follow this road, see where it goes. Unlike ordinary cars, you can actually mix your gears with this vehicle. So if 2nd gear is a little too slow, you can add 1st gear to it, and it gives you just that little extra kick for a relatively leisurely pace, but not quite as fast as 3rd gear. Now we're coming down out of the mountains now into the forest, which is a bit easier to navigate, so let's kick ourselves into 3rd and see whether or not we can manage our way through the forest a little bit faster than before. The handling is still a little rough. It's a little sluggish to respond, and it's very easy to oversteer, particularly the faster you go. Now we're coming out of the forest into the Badlands. Now you can see off to the left the beginnings of a future video, so I'm going to take a right into the Badlands where it's still a little rocky, but there aren't a whole lot of obstacles. So you get a little bit of rough terrain, but it's generally pretty good. So let's kick it up into 4th gear. Oh. And you can see the handling gets a little worse in 4th gear. We start going a little faster than the car might be able to reasonably handle, and you don't want to turn too fast or you'll flip yourself right over. Like so. But this car is pretty good at righting itself. Let's kick it back down to 3rd for a second. Okay. Oh, I apparently added 2nd and 3rd. Okay. Throw it into reverse. And let's kick it back into 2nd. You can go from any gear to just about any other gear. 2nd gear, like we said, it's a little slow. Add 3rd gear to 2nd, you get a pretty decent clip. It's a little bad in the Badlands because there's a lot of wobble to it. This vehicle doesn't have any shocks, so it's not necessarily well suited for off-roading. It would be amazing on really flat terrain. So let's actually start heading back into the forest, because it tends to be a little more even in the forest than it does in the Badlands. Now, there are no canonic names for any of the areas, so you just call them what it seems like it's appropriate to call them. But whenever working with normal cars, you only get one speed, the speed your engine is set at. So if you want to go faster or slower, you have to get out, you have to change the setting on your engine. This uses some fancy technology to be able to change your speed using multiple engines. But yeah, this is a fancy little manual transmission car. It's got reverse and 4 standard gears that can be mixed together for up to 15 gears that, like 15 speeds that aren't park. So you get a lot of versatility out of a single vehicle. So if you need to go up a mountain, you just shift down. If you want to take a leisurely sightseeing tour around the forest, you can downshift into 1 or 2. And there you are. The thrusters help to keep it on the ground. I haven't worked out all the details of making a stable vehicle besides wider wheelbase and shocks, because I've seen so many things with shocks that still topple right over. But including the thrusters gives it really good traction. And this is also 4-wheel drive, so even if you get stuck on one end, you can generally push yourself off from the other. And then if you hit back, it comes to a stop. I also have a couple of extra buttons. As you can see in my hotbar, I've got more than just the 5 for the gears. I've also got number 6, which turns on and off the stability thrusters. I've got number 7, which opens up the hood, so you can see the 5 engines inside, which are used for the different gears. And you can open that from the driver's seat. And number 8 opens, well, is supposed to open the trunk, but there's something wrong with the trunk, and it now will not open. So I will hop out and figure out why the trunk is being stupid. But if we push this button, the trunk opens, and here is the manual transmission. It's got 5, it's basically 5 AND gates all stuck together, but normally you'd have one thing for each AND, but given this is attached to the throttle, you can do it across all of the different gears. So these initiate the different gears, that activates the movement, and so it's just a nice AND gate that works to make a fairly straightforward sort of setup. Then we can just push this button again to close the trunk, and there we are. We've got ourselves a manual transmission vehicle for Scrap Mechanic. Let's just, we want number 2. And put on our stabilizers, and just putt around just a tiny little bit more, so you can see the sights. Not 6, I want 3. So we've got various water towers around. I've seen in other people's worlds they've got a little launch pad thing. I haven't run across the launch pad just yet. But you got the forest, you got the mountain, you got the Badlands, you got the Alameda-style fence around the outside so your vehicles don't get away from you, unless they can fly. But all in all, it's a nice little world for you to test out your various things. Because you've got different terrain types, you've got different impediment types. So if you want to make a really good handling car that can just weave in and out of trees, you can test that out. If you want one that can deal with Australian-style washboard roads, you can try that out. All in all, it's a nice sandbox, and this vehicle seems to work fairly well in a lot of situations, and depending on how fast you want to go, you can go pretty darn quick. It's not super fast. You can always go faster with rocket cars, because when you don't have to deal with friction, then you don't have to deal with friction. Over here is my spawn point. I've got a couple of little contraptions that I've been testing out. You'll get to see some of that in the future. Oh, I'm gonna crash. Boom. And as always, if something bad happens to your vehicle, there's always a way to fix it. Let's see, which gears are engaged? 4. Now, the trouble is, we are now completely off the ground. Even with our 4-wheel drive, there's no getting off of floating in the air. So we just hop out, grab our jack, pick it up, and then put it down somewhere else. Come on. And you could probably tell from my change in frame rates, this is a relatively laggy vehicle. It causes a significant amount of lag due to how complicated it is. If you grab the connection tool, it's got all sorts of connections going on. It uses sensors, it uses bearings, it uses thrusters. The chair is hooked up to many, many things, lots of switches. It's a relatively complicated vehicle. But it can do a lot of things. If we just take it off the jack, we can get going again. So if you've got any questions about how it works, feel free to ask them in the comments. I do plan on doing a bit of a tutorial. It might not be block by block, but it would be interesting for you to know how to make this thing in your own world. Take it for a spin, see how you like it, see if there's anything you could do to improve it. Because I'm sure this is not the ideal car. This is just my first attempt at making something cool. And I do plan on making more attempts. This game will eventually have a survival mode, so you can run away from evil robots in this thing. But, again, it just came out in early access. They're going to make lots of changes, lots of improvements, and hopefully they'll counteract some of the lag-inducing issues we've come across already. Because if just this one vehicle is capable of lagging out a single-player world, just imagine what would happen if you tried to do things multiplayer. Yikes. And everybody wants to make something as complicated as this, or more so. That's how it goes. So yes, manual transmission car. Keep an eye out for the tutorial. Feel free to like this video, comment, whatever. And I will see you in the next episode of Scrap Mechanic with Lyte.